It's 6/12 of 2024. Andy P, Big G, and Sarah C in the building on the Level Up College Football Podcast. Y'all, wherever you're getting your audio podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, it doesn't matter. Wherever you're listening to it, make sure you check out the Level Up College Football Podcast, where we give you all the breaking news, the big facts, and all the information concerning college football. And you're watching us live on YouTube, so we appreciate the chats. Chat it up. Get information out there. Speak it up. We'll make sure we share your comments and information. But right now, I'm sitting back chilling with Sarah C and Andy P on 12/16 of 2024. Maybe the last time we get together or close to it before the big Christmas day. So I just want to say what's cracking to Andy and Sarah. What's up, Andy?
You know, it's good to be back with y'all. I know that we had to take a little step away just because of everyone's crazy schedules, and schedules aren't stopping being crazy anytime soon here. So shout outs to everybody managing the chaos of the holiday season. Shout outs to everybody doing that thing. But my favorite, this is one of the new feelings that I'm trying to figure out here, is that there is college football games that mean something on Friday night. Like I still haven't quite processed that, like, this Friday night, like, I need to like tell people, like, my wife and I, we're going over to a friend. He's watching a Christmas movie every single night leading up to Christmas. Friday night he's having a party, and he's a big college football fan too. And I told him, I'm like, do you understand that we need to have a second screen going with the playoff game? Like, this is not like, this is new for all of us here. So we're all adjusted to this whole new world. Like, we're all working through it here.
Man, I get it. I totally understand. Sarah, what's cracking with you? How you been? It's been about a week or so. What's going on with you?
Yeah, just busy with work and everything. And Andy, my family does the same thing. And we did the Christmas vacation, and I had the Georgia-Texas game just on my phone the whole time on mute. And they're like, "What are you watching instead?" And there I was watching the football game. And then they're like, "Oh, what's happening?" I'm like, "Well, we could put it on, but the kids, of course, we're not going to go for it." So, but that's been about it. Get ready for these holidays.
They'd have been like, "Man, what is going on? Get out of here." Hey, listen. You know, we normally don't go off script or off subject, but I'm going to tell y'all, if you haven't seen it yet, you have to watch Red One. Red One is great. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they could combine Marvel and Santa Claus, but they did it. They pulled it off, and it was great, man. It was great. I actually watched it twice. Me and my wife watched it. We laughed, and then I watched it again. But Red One, man, is outstanding, man. So if you get a chance, you get an opportunity, for all of our listeners, all of our viewers, make sure you check out Red One, because it's a really good Christmas movie for sure. And we got to get The Rock in the MCU. So The Rock is that guy. But great movie. All right, y'all. We have had a lot happen since the last time we were actually live and in person on YouTube concerning college football. We got a couple of subjects we're going to touch before we actually get to the playoff breakdown, because these games are big-time moments, man. It's the first ever 12-team playoff. It's the first time, like Andy said, games on Friday night primetime, games on Saturday night primetime. It's going to get bananas, and home playoff games with teams traveling into other teams' stadiums, right? So we're going to get to the first subject, though, because it's more pressing, and it was just recent. We've named the Heisman Trophy winner. The Heisman winner has been named. It's Travis Hunter. It is the closest vote in college football history concerning how many votes he beat Ash Genty by. So I just want to get you guys' reaction concerning the Heisman Trophy. Sarah, I'm going to go with you. What is your reaction? Because I've seen you clapping. You're like, yay for Travis. So what is your reaction concerning it?
I mean, I called it probably, I don't know, when I first got on the show. I was already on him. I have always loved him. I just think he was just such a dominant player, but just such a great guy. And just to really see what he's done and his whole relationship with Deion and Shedeur, I just really thought was awesome. And they've made a really great team, and they've brought Colorado kind of back into the, media and everything. So they're bringing a lot of attention, which I think is great for that school, especially now that they're in the Big 12. So I was super happy. I really can see both sides. I definitely think it was between the two. I think if Genty would have gotten the record before the playoffs, I think that might have been a thing. But I think that had to play in a little bit on why he ended up getting edged out just a little bit.
I feel it. Andy, man, your reaction, your immediate reaction to Travis Hunter, because we haven't seen this since like Charles Woodson. So your reaction to a guy like Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy.
I mean, it's all credit to what Sarah kind of mentioned there. This has been an absolutely unbelievable young man to watch play college football, and it is really amazing that for the first time, we did not have a quote unquote blue blood school represented in the top 2 votes. Like, we're talking about Colorado and we're talking about Boise State. And it's funny because in any other year, if you would have told me that we've got one player who's doing historical things that we've never seen before on an 8-4 team that didn't play for his conference championship, beat out a star player on a playoff team, I would always say, yeah, give it to the guy on the smaller team. Give it to the guy who's the underdog. But it was such an interesting year because Genty, because he played at Boise, because he played on the Mountain West, The Athletic had a really great piece talking to former Heisman runner-ups and kind of talking about how historically the team with the most Heisman runner-ups is Stanford with 5. And there's a lot of West Coast bias that goes into this because of when the games kick off and because of just the amount of visibility there. And again, Travis Hunter had to deal with a lot of this too with Colorado, but Colorado has the TV deal with the big noontime slot that the Mountain West doesn't have. And I do think that this is going to, like, the Pac-12 with Boise State for next year doesn't have a TV deal. It'll be interesting to see if this impacts how they try to negotiate certain things. If we start seeing more West Coast games pushed up forward to compete with some of these East Coast games, because at the end of the day, I think you could have given it to either one of Hunter or Genty and had it been fair. I was always, while Sarah was on the side of Travis Hunter, beginning of the season, Big G and I did a segment where we were naming off X Factor players who we thought were going to impact the college football season at large. And Genty was my non-power 4 pick out of that. And obviously that came to be the truth. I think that running backs are just criminally undervalued right now in football. And this is a great example of how the standard for him to win the trophy was break the hardest record to break in football. So I do think that it's tough to turn around from Travis Hunter and say Genty was more deserving. I think it's just more of what kind of flavor of football do you like? But overall, like, I do think that this is an historic vote, not just because of how close it was, not just because the winner was a two-way player who has done something that we probably won't see very often, at least not at the Heisman caliber level, but because these are two players from two schools that probably we won't ever see this combination again. Like, this is an award that's historically dominated by the Blue Bloods, and I was really refreshing to not see the Blue Bloods dominating the conversation here.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Andy or Sarah. I think that you guys brought up, great points concerning it. We had a down quarterback year. We had the blue blood conferences that didn't really have the top player. I mean, Gabriel was there from Oregon. You didn't get an SEC guy there, which I couldn't believe. I mean, so you didn't have one of those, USC Trojan type guys or Notre Dame guy that should have been in that position to represent for the Heisman Trophy. And so, here's this generational player in Travis Hunter. So, but I got a question. My question is, do you think we'll see it again? Because I got little feelings about we're going to see maybe something like a Travis Hunter again. So, Andy, you prefaced it a little bit. You said, I don't know. We might not never see Travis Hunter again. Do you really think that we might see a Travis Hunter again in the near future for college football?
I mean, we're gonna see people who try. It's the same way in baseball. You're seeing a lot of players come out of the draft or in college attempt to be the next Shohei Ohtani who's throwing and pitching. The challenge and the reason that you don't do it is that doing it at that high of a level is incredibly difficult Doing it at that high of a level consistently is even harder. And that was the knock that we were talking about with Travis Hunter going into the season, was that last year he just could not do it at that highest level. There's a lot of talk about whether Travis Hunter will be able to do it at the NFL level at the same volume that he does it in college. We'll probably see him play two ways, but he's probably going to be a limited skill set player on one side of the ball or the other, just because the physicality in football makes this so much harder. So I do think that you'll see lots of players try and be recruited to play two ways, but I believe it was when College Game Day went to Colorado, there was a report, they did the feature with Travis Hunter talking about his health routine and talking about what he does. Like, this is a kid who doesn't really party. He's a kid that does not eat any junk food. Like, after he got to Colorado and he got on the nutrition program, he basically cut out a lot of junk food from his diet. He's doing electroshock therapy at 5 a.m. Like, the level of commitment that you have to put yourself in that position is just something that only a few people will be able to dedicate themselves to. And again, like, this is something where I think this is why you give Travis Hunter the Heisman, because the level of dedication, like on and off the field, what it takes to be as good as what he did on both sides of the ball, it's really hard. It's really hard.
So, Sarah, it's sort of the same question, but it's a little different. My question to you is, what do the blue blood schools, the Georgias, the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, what do they have to do to get back in the running? Because just as much as Heisman is about stats on the field, Heisman is about what you're able to do that impact college sports. And a lot of times, I think we take for granted that there's not impact going on because we've seen this and done that, as far as the blue bloods is concerned. So do you think that moving forward, the award is going to be more based on splash guys like a Genty, like a Travis Hunter, or do you think we'll trend back to the blue bloods?
Oh man, that's a tough one because I kind of can see both sides. I definitely think that the blue bloods are gonna probably get back in there. I mean, I think that that's possible, but I think the transfer portal has made this what it makes it so interesting, because you have these guys who are moving up from the really small schools, going to the mid-level schools, really getting their name out there, and then even going to a not super high school, but knowing that they have at least that notoriety and everything like that. And, a lot of these blue blood schools still are so about recruiting. I mean, they're bringing in some of the most talented players out there, but sometimes you don't even see them on their team anymore. They're gone already. So I think that is going to be the battle that those bigger schools need to do. So I definitely think that the splash players are going to become a thing for now. That's just the world we live in. But we're always going to end up with, some generational, quarterback or something like that. I mean, next year we have some really interesting ones to look at. So
that's a great segue, Sarah. So this is my question. If you had to name off 3 Heisman hopefuls for next year, Sarah, 1, 2, 3, give it to me. Who you got to win the Heisman Trophy to right now today? 1, 2, 3 for next season.
I went with Manning. Could I do 2 wide receivers though? Smith or Williams, and then Sellers. Okay. I think those are
Smith, Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State, Williams wide receiver Alabama. Who else you say? Arch Manning at Texas.
Manning at Texas, and then Sellers from South Carolina.
Lenore Sellers from South Carolina. Okay. Andy, 1, 2, 3. Who you got?
I think for me, Arch Manning is obviously the number one guy to watch, because he's going to come in the same way that, like, I think Carson Beck came into this year, where it's his award to lose, kind of. And obviously we saw Carson Beck lost it very early on in this season. But I do think that, kind of going outside the box here, along with the realm of Ashton Genty, he's just going to be the workhorse. Frazier down at Georgia. We are not sure what's going on with that quarterback room at all. Kirby Smart might just pull a full, like, remember when this happened with Nick Saban, when he started losing the quarterbacks that he had trust in? He just immediately churned out back-to-back Heisman running backs because he just refused to throw the ball at all in any way, shape, or form. Feel like we might be getting that with Georgia next year. And Frazier, we saw a little bit this season. he's got the goods, and he has the ability to both be game breaking in his speed the way that Genty is, and he's got some power. He's my guy who I'm kind of looking at. And then obviously DJ Lagway is the other quarterback in here who I think we have. Like, I was watching some of those games at the end of the year. He is doing the really amazing throws that you throw on highlight reels that get you Heisman buzz. Like, he's doing the thing where he's shaking guys off and throwing darts 40 yards down to the sideline in a tight window. He's somebody who I think, physically speaking, will be the most impressive quarterback next year. I just don't know if he's got a lot of like Leroy Jenkins in him, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to lead to the best stat sheet necessary to win the Heisman Award.
Yeah. I agree with you guys' picks. I just think that next year they're going to make sure that a quarterback is going to win it. And I think the best pure quarterback talent you have in America is in the Southeastern Conference. I think you got Arch Manning at Texas. You got DJ Langway at Florida. You got Lenora Sellers at Georgia. I mean, that starts the list. And then you have other serviceable SEC quarterbacks across the board. So I think that they're going to figure out how to get it back to a blue blood. Now, the transfer portal's crazy. We know it. We're not even going to talk about it. Next week's show, we're going to talk to you a little bit about the transfer portal because it'll be closing up and we can start to actually see players drop and end up at certain schools, which there's a couple of those kids that I think is going to end up and make an impact big time at certain schools. But I think when you start the Heisman Trophy conversation for next season, you got to start in the SEC and you got to start with those quarterbacks. Those three guys, and I'm saying this, the Heisman Trophy was directly affected by having not good quarterback play this year, but it'll be directly impacted next year based on the quarterback play. Because I left out like Nico, who's a dog quarterback. I mean, the SEC, and for you guys that don't know, is loaded. The kid that was the backup for Jackson Dart at Ole Miss is a dog. There's legitimate quarterbacks in SEC that are going to be playing on Sundays and might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks in next year's draft. 1 through 5. So, yeah, I look for the quarterback to take it over. All right. Question number 2 before we get to the picks for the live games. All right. We prefaced it a little bit. We said next week we're going to go deep into the transfer portal. But right now, today, we're going to talk to you about is changes needed? Because right now, listen, Marshall didn't play in a freaking bowl game because their entire team hit the portal. Arkansas has had 25 kids as of today hit the portal. There are teams that have lost almost half rosters or 1/3 of rosters just because we had an early portal window open in December. And so my question to you guys is like, is this just too much? Because this looks like, to me, this looks like free agency on a drug, a mood-altering and mind-altering substance, like NFL free agency just beyond. So, Andy, I'm going to ask you first, man. Is it too much by having all these portal windows and these kids jumping around for bags?
I mean, I think that this is a really nuanced topic that I actually think I have a counter opinion on. I actually don't think it's a problem whatsoever. I do think that the window timing and the window placement is a problem. But I don't think, like, we're looking at about 2,000 players in the portal. But when you look at the teams that are losing guys, it really comes down to team culture and it comes down to player expectations when they get recruited in. So let's talk about Marshall for a second. Marshall's a great example because going into this season, there had been several reports coming out of West Virginia that the coach and the athletic director hated each other. And there was a big scandal before the season where the coach basically called out the NIL at the school and said, this is a place that has expectations up here and has resourcing down here. And was basically setting the table for, hey, you've made this incredibly hard. He had to walk back that statement, had to issue a ton of apologies. And it was basically known all year that he was going to get fired at the end of the year. He was on an expiring contract and they were just looking to get rid of him. They then go and win their conference. And instead of offering a contract extension, the athletic director lets him walk and go to Southern Miss, where the majority of these transfers are going with him. They're going to Southern Miss. This was a completely avoidable situation if the administration and the coach had gotten on the same page at the beginning of the season, and they didn't. You look at what's happening in Arkansas. That was a situation where early in the season, Big G, you and I were talking about how that was a coach on the hot seat right away. We thought Bobby Petrino would be coaching this team by midseason.
Big facts.
They haven't really done a real extension down there. They've continued to let the situation fester. And so now if you're a player, you're going like, look, if I'm young, this is a situation that might change next year. They haven't done anything to fix this for me. So I'm going to get on out of here. And so you look at the top 4 Power 4 schools that have lost transfers. It's Arizona, who new coach, first year, last minute portaling, really did not live up to expectations. We talked about Arkansas. Mississippi State was terrible this season. And then Kentucky has Bob Stoops, another coach who actively tried to leave in the offseason, but didn't get the Texas A&M job.
Facts.
And then at the group of 5, New Mexico lost its coach, Charlotte lost its coach, Marshall lost its coach. And then Western Kentucky is another. Western Kentucky is really the only one of these schools that is not in that kind of situation. So again, like my long-winded point here is basically like a school like Syracuse goes 9-3, overperforms expectation. Everybody goes, oh, this school is going to get portal rated like crazy. The only guys who are leaving for the portal right now are guys that didn't play, that Fran Brown essentially said in his last press conference, like, yeah, I want you to go somewhere else. I want you to play somewhere else because clearly you weren't good enough to play here. Like, let me find you a home somewhere else. I think if you have a good enough culture and coaching staff, you're not going to get portal rated either by being good or get portal rated when you have a down season. I think we're just seeing that a lot of places don't have strong football cultures right now. The coaching staffs just aren't doing a good job communicating what it is that they're driving towards. Because if you're a football coach who only cares about money, only cares about moving up, your players are only going to care about money and moving up when they get the opportunity.
Man, great points, Andy, man. Sarah, this is going to be hard to follow, but I'm going to preface the question just a little bit, okay? We're used to the traditional blue blood program stacking talent and developing talent, right? If for most of the programs, the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Michigans, it's next man up. Yeah. You lose a guy, and it's the next guy. You put him in there, he comes to play right off the bat. He's able to maintain the excellence at the program, right? So now with these windows, how much is it destroying them? Because you're not stacking rosters anymore in college football. And regardless, like what Andy said is true, but there's teams that like, look, if I'm a quarterback or I'm a skill position guy and I know I can play, I'm not waiting because you're going to recruit a guy in front of me. So why would I wait? So how much do you think that disturbs like the ability for the Blue Bloods to stack talent?
Oh, I think it extremely disturbs up. That's the whole, why aren't you getting into the portal, all that different stuff. And then look at what Dabo did, which is still shocking to me right now. But no, I think that, that's where I think what Andy said, and it made me think about it a lot more because I haven't, is, it's all about, well, what kind of team culture do you have? Is that coach giving you enough of a reassurance that, hey, it might not happen now, but we're going to get there. We're going to get you next year. Wait until you're starting. But you have to have trust and stuff like that. And you don't know who's always in these kids' ears. You don't know who's telling them that, oh, I have this much money for this little bit. And we'll get you, number 1 draft pick or something like that. Like these are the types of promises that they're making and they're not following through, which is why there's already been lawsuits. So I think it's just a touchy subject still, because there's no limitations right now. And I think that they just need to really figure that out. I love it. I think it's great because it's really awesome to see some of these kids really get the opportunities to play and see these kids from mid-level schools showing up and then getting, the Blue Blood schools. So I think the Blue Bloods just got to get better at that part. But you got to hire the right coach. You got to hire the right people that are going to surround those teams. And when you have coaches like Kirby Smart, who brings so much energy and so much culture, you're not going to have 25 players leaving ever. Like he's still going to be recruiting.
Right. And just one quick thing on that I do think is going to be interesting that we don't know about. And again, I'm coming at this from a Syracuse perspective. During Syracuse's press conference for their National Signing Day, Syracuse signed 35 kids. So if you add 35 kids to their current roster, they are well over the current scholarship limit. Next year, allegedly, again, we don't know for sure because we're waiting for the NCAA to make things official. You can have up to 120 scholarship football players on your roster.
That's
and
big
we
facts.
do not know yet which schools are going to say, yes, we are going to take up to 120, and which schools are going to say, no, we just don't want to, or we can't do that yet. And I think that might change. Like what Sarah was mentioning is spot on, because when you expand the rosters, does this mean that portaling is going to stop? Does it mean it's going to increase? It's going to come down to if these blue bloods do a great job of establishing those cultures internally, because they'll have the space for as many players as they want if they feel valued and if they feel they want to stay. And so this is the last transfer portal window that we have where you're still operating under the old 85 scholarship limit.
I agree with it. I guess this is just my thought process of what I see. Okay. So currently, what is the number? 85 scholarships that you can have active on a roster from a college football organization or team. Okay. But they've created this thing that's called collective scholarships. Collective scholarships are the NILs got together and they said, okay, we got this amount of money that we can pay for this kid's education or school. Okay. And it doesn't matter if you put them on full athletic scholarship, we're going to take care of them. Right. And so what I'm seeing from that is the jockeying for position concerning recruiting, because now coaches are going in and saying, well, we might not have a full athletic scholarship for you, but we got a collective scholarship. Now, I don't know about you guys. That's cold hard cash. That's not like, because people don't understand and know that scholarships is what you call tuition remission or tuition discount. It's not that you're actually getting bread, but from a collective scholarship, that's straight up money, right? So it's not tuition, remission or discount. So if I'm a certain type of player and this school sells me, oh, I'm going to give you a collective scholarship, which means that I can float my money any kind of way I need to because it's my money, man, that's a little bit more attractive. So, Andy, I'm interested to see exactly what you're talking about. Is the 120 expansion going to create room for these schools to say, hey, look, we don't necessarily need the collective dollars to go directly towards scholarshiping players to make sure they're taken care of. We're going to lose the collective dollars to influence and impact the program in way bigger facets versus paying for athletes. But in turn, you guys both know the more competition you have, the more kids are going to get out of there because they're going to look for an opportunity to play and play right away, because every kid that's in college believes, oh, I got a shot for the NFL. I mean, I've been around the game for almost 50 years. I know that. I know that's the conversation. And like you said, Andy and Sarah, people get in their ears. They say, I want this and that and this and this, and you never know. So I think that they're going to have to put some type of regulations, and the transfer portal is not going to be open pre-bowl. It's just not going to happen.
Agreed.
Because if you keep doing that, now it's like, okay, I'm dependent on this kid because the guy in front of me left. Like Michigan, case in point. Michigan's got all these guys that there's not playing, but then the guys behind them that's supposed to be ready to play in the bowl game is transferring out. So it's creating this controversy, which in turn to me is going to affect the bottom line of college football, because the playoffs is going to make bread. Those other bowls, I don't know. And so if you're running next year's spring game, Michigan versus next year's spring game, Alabama, out on a bowl game, who's going to watch that? People pay to see stars play. The guy's going to play at the next level. So this portal has, what it's done, in my opinion, is diminished the rosters prior to the bowl game to give kids opportunities to showcase their talent and all whatever else. And so because of that, I think we got an issue. But like I said, next week we're going to go into it in depth concerning the transfer portal and talk about some hot names and hot kids and hot players that have officially hit the portal and went on to other locations. All right, y'all, look, we're about at that 29-minute mark. We're going to take a quick commercial break, pause for the cause, get a word from our sponsors and partners. If you're watching this live on YouTube, we'll be right back, and we appreciate everybody in the live chat. If you're listening to us on audio, wherever you get your audio podcast, Apple, Spotify, and Google, we'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network. Andy P, Sarah C, and Big G in the building, talking college football. Hey, we thank everybody over on the YouTube, some of our favorites, Afton, Rob Lightfoot, Tim. Thank you guys for rocking with us for another great show. But we're going to get to what everybody came here for. It's playoff football, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to get it in. All right, we got 4 big games. First time on college campuses, primetime games. Man, this is going to be a great one. So we're going to start it off, maybe for one of our favorite guys over in the chat, Tim. We're going to kick this bad baby off with the Indiana Hoosiers, currently ranked number 10, invading South Bend, Indiana, which ain't that far away, to play Notre Dame in a primetime game on Friday night. Notre Dame's favored by 7. Andy, what you got for this game, bro?
This is a game that I think we have been waiting for in the playoff setting in 2 different ways. The first, Indiana and Notre Dame, like, this is the battle for the state of Indiana, man. Like, it has been a very long time since Notre Dame has had anybody ready to challenge them in that state, in that area. And Indiana is obviously going to be up for it. Like, it's a playoff game. It's the first time that Indiana's football team has been this good. Of course, they were up for it, but like this is now taken on another level of meaning. The other part of this is that from the Notre Dame side, I think I said this a couple weeks ago. I think we all over-indexed on that Northern Illinois loss. And then Notre Dame just went out and was one of the most dominant teams in college football for the back half of the season. And this is the kind of game where the bookmakers are saying, yeah, Notre Dame's a touchdown better than Indiana. And that, they're at home, so they're definitely a touchdown better. I think if you look at the numbers at just how dominant Notre Dame has been down the stretch and how much Indiana struggled against more physical opponents, especially Ohio State, this is a opportunity for Notre Dame to essentially stand up and say, like, yeah, we should be one of the favorites in this tournament. And for me, just like looking at the numbers, they don't, a lot of the numbers don't love Notre Dame as much as the bookmakers do right now. Like most of these games are going to be 1 scores. And so a touchdown's a pretty big spread here. But for me, I'm kind of taking out Indiana's results against a lot of bad Big Ten teams and taking out Notre Dame's results against a lot of weaker teams on their schedule. And when both of them have played bigger opponents, Notre Dame has shown a flexibility and a malleability where they can score a lot of points like they did against USC, against Army, or they can just beat your brains in. And I think that is going to be really important for a game that's supposed to be right now at kick. Weather forecast says mid-20s, 30% chance of snow.
Ooh, it's going to, but you know what? They both used to it because they both in the Midwest. So it's not going to be as a dramatic effect as we're seeing across the board with other games. But Sarah, I'm going to ask the question this way concerning Indiana and Notre Dame. All right. Cignetti, man, built his team out the mud, right? We were just talking about transfer portal. Cignetti is the first of his kind. He built enough team to make to the college football playoff based on his transfer portal from last year's class. These were the land of the misfit toys that came from all these other schools that needed an opportunity to shine. And boy, did they shine. So now here we are against the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame, touchdown Jesus. Do you give Indiana an opportunity to beat Notre Dame?
Oh, I mean, I think you can at least give them the opportunity. I have found it extremely enjoyable to watch them. I really am all 4 games I'm so excited about because I feel like it's going like old school football. It's going to be so much like smash mouth type of football. There's so many great defenses on both sides of almost every single one of these teams. So I think Indiana is going to try their hardest. I think that they're going to play as hard as they possibly can. And it's just going to really be about, how explosive they will allow Notre Dame to be against them, to how close it keeps. I still think possibly, they could pull the upset, but they're not my major upset for the first round. I really don't even know if I have one yet. I'm kind of still back and forth on one game. But I mean, Cignetti's going to have his players ready, and I think that it's going to just be really fun, and I can't wait to watch a Friday night 8:00 game up at Notre Dame. Like, that's just, you never knew that was going to ever happen.
Man, yeah. Who would have thought? I mean, we couldn't even have thought about this 3 years ago. That you would actually see a game in South Bend, Indiana, in the freezing cold, in the tundra, in December, but against an opponent that ain't scared to play in the snow and be tough, because they've been practicing outside just like Notre Dame's been practicing. I don't know the exact mileage between Bloomington, Indiana, and South Bend, but it can't be that far because they both right there in the Midwest. So I'm saying it's under 150 miles. So there's no advantage for playing in that inclement weather that's headed for Notre Dame right outside of Chicago, Illinois. So saying all that, Andy, who you got this week in the first playoff game of the 12-team playoff, man?
Yeah, this is I think this is going to be my favorite game of the weekend just because of all the implications. I also think that this is not going to be the Cinderella game. I like Notre Dame to win this. I really do think that if you look at the numbers and looking for a weakness to exploit here, College Football Insiders has the EPA per play. Notre Dame is a top 3 rushing attack, and Indiana is 11th at stopping the run. They're good, but Notre Dame should be able to run the ball here. And I just think that being at home and playing this physical brand of football that Indiana has struggled to stop when you go up against bigger teams, I think it just allows for you to not ask Riley Leonard to do too much. It allows you to play a pretty safe game plan and be okay here. And I think ultimately, if you are going to play a smash mouth football game because of the weather, because of that's the way the game state's going, Notre Dame's defense has just been elite this year in those types of games. They struggle against teams that want to air the ball out more, and I just don't think that that's going to happen here. So I'm taking Notre Dame. I think they win this one 24-13. I think it's probably low scoring for most of the game, and then as Indiana tries to take some shots later on, Notre Dame just takes advantage of that and is able to kind of tilt the game in the third and fourth quarter.
Feeling it. Sarah, who you got this week for Notre Dame and Indiana?
Yeah, like I said, I would love to see an upset just in any of these games, but I just don't see it happening, especially in this one. I think Indiana's definitely going to get those scores late on, so I think it's going to be a little bit closer than a lot of people are going to think. I think the line actually works out pretty well. I went to 24-17 Notre Dame.
24-17 Notre Dame. I like it. You guys, I think this might be one of the highest scoring games of the weekend. I think that, and the reason why is this. I think Curtis Rourke is the most underrated quarterback in all college football. He can spin it. People don't give him credit for it, but he can spin that football. And Indiana has very good wide receivers. Not worse than average, better than average. But Notre Dame has NFL defensive backs. So when you get games like that and matchups like that, I'm going to prove to you that I can best you at what I'm good at. So I think they're going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What it's going to come down to is, can Indiana slow down Notre Dame? Because Leonard is a good quarterback and they have an outstanding running game. So I'm calling for this game to be a high-scoring game. I think Notre Dame wins late. And Notre Dame kicks it off with the first win of the college football playoff, 31-27. But it might be the game of the weekend as far as the score is concerned. All right, y'all, we're going to shift to game 2. All right, so this is the first game in Austin, Texas. You got old Mr. Dabo and Cade Klubnik coming home from Westlake High School. For you guys that don't know to listen to us, you need to check out Westlake High School in Austin, Texas, and see how many NFL quarterbacks have won Super Bowls from Westlake High School in Austin, Texas. There's like 3 in the current NFL right now. So they put out that product. And what better way for Dabo to come home with Cade Klubnik and a couple of other players that's on the roster that's actually from Austin, Texas, and go against the Longhorns of Texas down there in the 40 acres. Sarah, this might be a good one. Texas ranked number 5, Clemson ranked number 12. The Longhorns is favored by 11.5. What you got this week, Sarah, concerning the Clemson Tigers and the Texas Longhorns?
I think Clemson has a chance if they can really, really get that offense going. I think that seems to be the way that they're able to get that lead. They did not use their rushing attack barely at all this past week, and I think that's going to be the hardest thing to get started. If they can do that, Klubnik stays a little bit less, not as many mistakes. It throws a really nice deep ball. They can use the run pass, they can use all these different options. So it's going to be really about how Texas's defense plays, because each week it's like I felt like about Georgia earlier in the year. Like, I just don't know how you can trust that offense right now on Texas, because I don't know if it's just that he's hurt still or what's going on, but it's like he's gone. It's like, oh, these are when the games really mean something, and now you're playing worse. I don't know if that was just because of the fact that they were playing against such a great defense like Georgia, but he's looked iffy in the past couple weeks. So I don't know how much I can really truly trust him. And that could be something that Clemson will try to showcase. But Clemson is definitely better on the offensive side, in my opinion. And Texas is definitely better on the defensive side. So I think it's going to be quite the battle. But I think that Texas has a little bit more talent when it comes to the defensive end, and they have a really great secondary. So they're going to put a lot of pressure on those wide receivers of Clemson. So I see it being a little bit closer, but I really like Texas.
Like it. Andy P., what you got this week with Texas versus Clemson, bro?
Yeah, I'm very much aligned with Sarah here. I think that if Clemson's going to win this game, they're going to win it in a shootout, and Quinn Ewers is going to give the ball away a few times and make plenty of mistakes. I don't think that Arch Manning is probably going to see the field here. It doesn't feel like Sark is quite ready for that. Otherwise, we would have seen him a lot more down the stretch, considering how hurt. I'm just making the assumption that Ewers is hurt at this point. Like, that's really it. There's no other way to explain it. And like, that championship game against Georgia was worrisome, but the problem that I have with this particular matchup is that Clemson's defense is just, it's above average. It's not great. It's not elite. It's not even one of these defenses that does one thing really well. It just does everything. It just does everything great. It just does everything good. And traditionally, Clemson defenses have been able to generate pressure without rushing the passer with more than 4 or 5 guys. That's not what you're getting with this Clemson defense. It's much more scheme oriented. And if you're getting, at the minute that you talk about scheme orientation, Sark has the advantage here. And that's really the thing, is that we saw in that Georgia game, even though they didn't win the game, they were still able to move the ball on Georgia through the running game. They were able to move it in the short passing game. I just don't see a winning recipe here for Clemson unless they're able to get that offense clicking in a way that, to your point, Big G, like, Cade Klubnik's going to need to go Super Saiyan in this game, if Clemson's going to have even a shot at winning this one.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to say this about Klubnik, man. I think that as the season went on, he got progressively better. And I think his last 3 or 4 games were really good. I mean, even the South Carolina game, he didn't play bad. It's just that they were outmanned, mano y mano. South Carolina had killers, to where they didn't have that killer that you're used to seeing on Clemson's offense and defense, where there's a guy you like, man, we got to stop him. I mean, think about receivers and running backs and quarterbacks that they've had over at Clemson. I don't know if they got that guy this year. But I will say this about Clemson. Clemson's almost a poor man's Georgia. Cade Klubnik and Mafa look a lot like Etienne and Beck. They're a poor man version of it, right? And so where does Texas struggle? That duo. Beck, Georgia's defense was decent, good. NFL players for facts. But they beat Texas up by running the ball straight at them, and they wasn't scared. So I think this is going to be a good game, but I'll just say this. I'm going to pick the Longhorns to win at home against Austin. Give me Texas 31, Georgia 20. And Georgia might score a late touchdown to give them 20. I think Texas comes out early and often and dominates, and I think they have to get Quinn Ewers off to a fast start, whether he's healthy or not. Because if not, and if Clemson's able to keep the game close, Dabo's always likely to pull a rabbit out of his hat this year. Sarah, who you got in this game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good fight. I really think that, like you said, I think we're really going to have to see Texas's offense blow up and put some points up there. But it's going to be about Clemson's offense in the end. Whether or not they can keep up and keep going, or vice versa. Really, actually, if I really look at it, but I still think Texas is a little bit stronger on that defensive side. And if they can keep Ewers safe and they can keep him from making, the pass that you don't really trust. I think that they're going to be able to win. I think Sark is just a little bit better when it comes to schemes, and he's really good at playing around with those types of things. So I went with a little bit closer, but lowering score. I went 28-21, Texas.
Like it. Andy, who you got, bro?
Yeah, I think I'm just kind of aligned with what everybody here is saying, with the only caveat being that I'm just not super impressed with this Clemson team. I haven't been all year. They've obviously, as Rob Liefeld mentioned in the chat, they're 0-2 against the SEC already this year. Losing that game to South Carolina, just not what you want. And so I think I'm going to go Texas here. I actually don't think this is going to be all that close. I think Texas wins this one 30-14. And they're able to move on, and they kind of show that this is a true 5-12 matchup where they're pretty much better than the 12 seed.
Big facts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause for the cause, get our last ad break, because we got to pay bills on Fans First Sports Network. If you're listening to us on audio, just give us a second. Let's hear from our sponsors. If you're watching us live on video, and we appreciate everybody over in the live chat, we'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Fans First Sports Network, talking college football playoffs. Andy P, Sarah C, Big G. We got 2 games to go. And I think one of them might be the game of the year. But we'll get to that. But first up, man, you know how Andy was just talking about a little bit ago with the temperature and weather and all that other stuff supposed to be? We got the first legitimate South team headed to the north to play in the cold against Penn State, the SMU Mustangs, who was fittingly put into the playoff because they were the first team with the death penalty. And now it's all legal to play players. So they didn't play a bunch of kids. They got that quarterback Jennings. They got a bunch of kids, right? But they're going to go up to old Happy Valley in the cold, in the snow. I know Andy's going to tell you something about the weather report. So Penn State, number 6, versus number 11, SMU, at an 8.5 favorite for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Andy, what you got this week on this game for the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, look, this one, a little bit less chance of snow, but it is going to be cold, and there is a chance. And you both live in Pennsylvania, Ohio. You understand that weather just comes and goes as whatever it pleases. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the report to get there. So all that into consideration, I think that Penn State actually kind of impressed me in their loss to Oregon. Oregon was clearly the better team in that championship game, but Penn State showed a level of physicality and a level of offensive flexibility that I didn't think that they had. But I do think when you look at how both SMU and Penn State kind of performed in their championship games, I'm concerned for Penn State getting into a shootout here, because even though everybody looks at SMU, they're the 9th best offense in terms of EPA when it comes to passing attack. It's their defense that has gotten to them to where they are and into this position. They have the 12th best overall defense and the 5th best defense against the run. And so if you're Penn State, the offense over the last few weeks has really been, don't let Drew Aller get too comfortable back in the pocket. Like, let him do lots of rollouts, let him do lots of passing on the move. But we're really trying to run the ball here. And it really kind of feels like we are going towards a game where if it is going to be cold weather, it's going to be down to SMU's run defense versus Penn State's running offense. And we've seen that kind of game from James Franklin a lot, and it has not been successful for him. Like I have a running joke in my group chat going that like, oh, all season we've been James Franklin on path to be the first head coach to lose a home playoff game. And when the SMU matchup kind of got announced, I was like, okay, well, maybe that's not going to happen. And then you dig into the numbers a little bit more, and that's where the game's going to happen. And I just have a really hard time trusting Penn State in a game where the game plan with all the weeks leading up to it is going to be focused on running the ball. And if SMU goes up early and Penn State has to adjust on the fly, I just haven't seen that from Penn State at all under James Franklin in big games.
Sarah, so Bo Perlini, the backup quarterback for Penn State, hit the portal. This is all on Drew Aller, who's already declared to say that he will be back for next season.
Yeah.
So what are you liking concerning SMU and Penn State in this matchup this week?
I definitely think that we're going on a prove it game for both of these coaches. SMU's coach was like, fighting for them just constantly, like, we deserve this. Look at what we've done. We want to be in this playoff. We deserve to be in this playoff. We're going to really show this team up. And James Franklin just needs to prove the fact that he can win a big game. This may not be the biggest opponent that he's ever had, but this is one of the biggest games that actually means something that he's playing in. And that's the best part about all of this, is that we're in the middle of December and we're watching college football that means something that's going to continue, which I think is just awesome. So I just love the whole concept of it. But I think Penn State I agree with Andy. I think they looked much better offensively in certain aspects against Oregon. They were really putting up the points. It really made me see a lot out of Oregon is playing against that Penn State defense. So I really was impressed by that. But I think that really it comes down to Aller. And if SMU can really get that pressure on him and make him make those mistakes early, he's not going to recover. He is not able to. He doesn't have that in him. I think it's interesting that he thinks that he was going to be picked in the NFL draft this year. So that's why he's going back. He's going to make the money and see if he can get his name out possibly next year. I think that's really all he wants out of this. So I could see this being the closest and upsettiest games of the week. I love that SMU team. I love their coach. I love Kevin Jennings. I really am impressed by what they've been able to do. And I love the fact that they came back in that championship game to be like, okay, we may not end up winning this, but we're gonna try our hardest to make sure that we can get this and prove to everybody that we actually are a top 12 team. So I think this is going to be a little bit not as exciting, but I think it's definitely going to be a good game. And I can't wait to actually see how Penn State does on their noon whiteout.
Yeah. Listen, if this game was played at night, it would be a landslide. But I think the fact that it is played at 12 o'clock versus being played at 8 o'clock, Happy Valley hits, but it hits different at night. And so when you start talking about the ability of the quarterback to adjust on the fly, I think Jennings is a better passer than Drew Aller. And I think Jennings has better weapons on the outside than Drew Aller. But I think that Penn State with Warren, Singleton, and Allen, the tight end and the running backs that they have, they can beat SMU up. And so, like, Andy, you're absolutely correct that the issue is going to be who gets their strategy off first. And I'm going to be blunt. If I'm Penn State and I win the toss, I'm taking the ball. I'm telling you straight up, I'm taking the ball. We're going 75 yards, 80 yards, 12 plays and scoring. And looking over at their sideline, are you really ready for this? But I think strategy is going to come down to it. And I think who does what early in this first quarter is going to set the game up completely, pending all the way through the fourth quarter. So, Andy, who you got to win the game, Penn State and SMU in Happy Valley?
Yeah, I think your point spot on, Big G. And those are sometimes the hardest football games to pick, because it really does come down to like who's handling the day of nerves better, who's handling this right. Ultimately, I do think I'm going to pick Penn State to win this one, but as soon as the bracket came out, I put my money where my mouth is, and I put on SMU to cover. I still really like SMU to cover this game. And I do think that, there's probably some value to be had. If you don't trust Penn State and you don't love the matchups here, I think that this is your one game where you could see an upset happen. But I'm gonna pick SMU covers, but Penn State wins this one. Give me Penn State to win this one. 20. They're gonna score 30. I think Penn State's gonna score 30. SMU is gonna score 27. And I think SMU will have the ball at the end, but it's gonna be a field goal game here.
Yeah. So Sarah, Penn State's got this kid named Amir Abdullah, number 11. It's a beast, right? Jennings is a dog, the quarterback, right? So what are you liking for the score? And do you think Amir Abdullah will be a factor?
Yes and no, because that SMU offensive line has done very well at keeping Jennings super upright for a lot of the season. So I think that, yes, he is quite a dog, and like can definitely get in those minor holes to get to that quarterback. So he's definitely an extremely great talent. So I wouldn't be surprised. But I really was impressed by the SMU offensive line this year. But I definitely think it's going to be close. I definitely think it's going to be like who ends up with the scoring early and then who can actually come back in the end. I went with the same thing about, I think they're going to cover. I would love to say that SMU wins. I don't know for sure if I can fully trust it, especially it being up in Penn State. So I went with 36-30 for Penn State, but it could flop.
Yeah, that's right. I'm telling you, this is the game that I've been the closest on. Like, am I going to pull the upset trigger? Because I'm looking at all the good things that SMU does. But the one glaring thing that stuck out to me is their strength of schedule, and they didn't beat a top 25 opponent. They ain't played nobody like Penn State yet. And so Penn State is a different animal. People can say what they want to say about James Franklin's inability to beat Ohio State, but he beats everybody else. And he doesn't get like blown out. He just gave Oregon everything they wanted. And I think one or two plays, one way or another way, Penn State was in that game to win it. So I like Penn State to cover. And I think Penn State wins the game 38-27. And they score late to run the score up on them to move to the next level. And James Franklin saying, look, man, I'm here to win this dang on thing. And don't be shocked if Penn State makes a little bit of run. All right, y'all, the game that, man, I got so many mixed emotions about this game, man. I mean, listen, man. It's a scarlet out.
Yeah.
Okay, for you guys that don't know, it's an SEC country and all whatever else. You got the light show that goes on over there with Kirby and Georgia. You got the light show that goes on in Alabama, definitely in Death Valley. Where it gets South Carolina gets nuts at night. Well, $1 million has been invested in the Ohio State Light Show, including money directly given to the program from LeBron James. And the request was that if I'm going to give you all this money, we're going to scarlet it out. In the meantime, the ticket for the season ticket holders code got leaked out, and these volunteers then bought up every ticket they possibly can. So Ohio State's normally about 104, 105,000. I'm expecting to see at least 35 to 40,000 Tennessee fans there. But it's going to be a scarlet out. It's at night. Ryan Day is coming off of a grueling 4th loss to Michigan. And here comes Nico Squirrel Sampson and that dog defense they got. Tennessee, ranked number 9, invades Ohio State, ranked number 8. +7 Ohio State. Andy, bro, what you got, man, for this game, Tennessee versus Ohio State?
I think that I think there's going to be a lot of focus put on the Nico Tennessee offense, the Sampson Tennessee offense versus the Ohio State offense and all the weapons that Ohio State has gone out and, invested in or recruited in, and Jeremiah Smith and next year's Heisman. This game's coming down to defense, man. Ohio State, number 1 ranked defense in SP+. Tennessee, number 3 defense ranked in SP+. Both teams do it by dominating the line of scrimmage with a massive front four and then supplementing in with great linebackers, just attacking gaps, hitting their angles right. And I think that again, it's not going to snow in Columbus. It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold. But I think that this is just like your classic defensive game here. I think we're going to see a lot. It's going to look a lot more similar to the SEC championship game than it did to the Big Ten championship game, in my opinion here, because of just how dominant both of these defenses are. And so when that is the case, it comes down to which quarterback do you trust to make a play right here? And Nico has really struggled these last few weeks. Teams have essentially rush 3, rush 4, drop everybody else back, and force him to take the underneath routes. Don't let him spin the ball, get matchups deep downfield. And he hasn't pushed anything yet. He hasn't done any dumb mistakes yet because most teams have not been able to get pressure into that backfield. Ohio State can. On the flip side, we've got a quarterback on Ohio State side who has been through the ringer this year. Has just not looked great in 2 games so far. And I do think this is the prove it game for him. This is the get the momentum going for the rest of the playoff run if you're going to make one, because at the end of the day, Ohio State has the better weapons, in my opinion. Ohio State has the better setup to take advantage of this. I just don't know if they have the better quarterback in this matchup.
I'm liking it, man. Sarah, this is our squad, Sarah. Ryan Day, Sarah. What is he on, Sarah? So we got the Buckeyes versus Tennessee, man. What you got this week, Sarah?
Well, all I can say to start off is this is a Steeler game through and through on both sides of the ball for both of these teams. It's going to be rushing and defense, and it's going to be some, maybe not fully NFL level, but this is going to be one of those games that you do not see always in college. You see a lot more flash plays type of things. I think you're going to see the ball in Judkins' hands, you're going to see the ball in Sampson's hands, and you're really just going to see them both pounding the ground, especially in a cold weather game. That's really how you want to win it. And then, like you said, Andy, with both lines of scrimmages both defenses are extremely, extremely talented. And the one thing that Ohio State does have is they have the number 1 defense in the rankings, but they also have the number 1 red zone defense. They don't, if they, they might get all the way down there, but they're not letting them cross ever that goal line as much. So that's going to be really to see if Nico can throw that short pass touchdown type of stuff and how much pressure they can put him under. I think it's really going to be on that. I don't distrust Howard. I just don't know yet because, yes, he hasn't looked great against the better teams. He definitely looked better when he was against Penn State, so I know that he can do it. But it's definitely going to be about how he starts off that game, and if he makes that early interception, can he shake it off like he did against the Penn State game, or is he going to have those other games where he makes that early mistake and he can't seem to shake it for the rest of the game? So I definitely understand where you're coming with on the trust issue, but I don't think that either sides are game planning for a lot of that, the ball being in those quarterbacks' hands. I really, really, really see this being just one of the more fun games to watch because I just love that smash mouth old school football. I mean, like I said, I grew up a Steeler fan. That's our bread and butter. So that's all I can really, really see out of this game, something like that.
I'm digging it, man. And, I went back and I've watched all 22 film on Tennessee now. I've watched 2 full games. I'm actually probably going to watch part of a 3rd game tonight. And I might even get the chance to watch a 4th game before the actual playoff game is concerned. And, of course, I've sat down on Ohio State all year. I think this is one of the games that it doesn't matter what's going to go on the outside because Tennessee lines up and they play 4 receivers outside the hash. They spread you out to run the ball, right? Ohio State wants to play sideline to sideline and then wear you down so that way they can get a vertical shot and or they can bust a big run play by just having you tired and windy, right? Well, both of these teams' rotations as far as the trenches are concerned, are going to be critical. Because Jack Sawyer and JTT cannot be gassed when this game comes down to the third and fourth quarter, because it's going Ohio State to be in trouble. But at the same time, will Tennessee rotate their players, because they have a tendency to leave players in for longer periods and longer stints. Don't get the rotation that you need in order to not be gassed coming in the fourth quarter. So offensive line versus defensive line play is going to be huge, because everybody's got the skill spots, right? Is Nico better than Will Howard? Probably. Does Will Howard got better weapons than Nico? Probably. So it's a wash. So it comes down to those trenches, man. And I just think who's ever the toughest when the pads is popping, because I think they're calling for temperatures to be anywhere between 21 degrees, and then by the time we go in the second half, it's going to be 13, 14 degrees outside. So it's going to be really cold. No snow, but ice cold. So who's going to get tough when it's cold? That's the whole question. Who's going to like it? Who's want to get hit when it gets cold? So saying all that, Sarah, what you got? Who you got this week for your game and your final score?
I think Ohio State's going to pull it off. I think that they're going to, like I said, keep it close and really just pound that ball down Tennessee's throat. I think it's going to be a lowering scoring game. I don't see it going up too high. Tennessee's definitely going to keep it close, though. I actually really like that team. I've been on Dylan Sampson all season, so I really want to see, I want to see him do well. I just don't want to see him beat us. So, I kind of have to be on that level. I went with 21-17 Ohio State.
Oh, close game and close score.
I think so.
Yeah. Andy, who you got, bro? And what's your score?
Yeah, same here. I think that this game's going to be real close. But I just think that the Southern team coming north is going to be a little bit too much. I think that both teams wanting to play the grind the ball out, especially after the Michigan game. I don't think you're going to see Ohio State look as bad in those short yard situations and in those obvious running situations.
Mm-hmm.
Give me Ohio State to win this one 24-21. Real close game. I'm gonna be thinking of both of you watching this game and just knowing that, like, I do not wish to have your heart rates during this one.
Yeah, I think this game is going to play out and be a lot closer than you guys are saying, but the national media is not. They're saying that Ohio State's going to be able to pull away from Tennessee late. I believe they can, but it's going to be based on this. They have to take anywhere between 5 and 8 shots vertically with Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. If they do that, that puts them in position. But it can't come down to the field goal kicker winning the game, because he's not going to do it. He misses too many kicks. So they're in position with red zone, inside the 20, inside the 25, even inside the 30. They got to mash the gas. So Day, I think, is going to take chances on 4th and 3, 4th and 4, 4th and 2, because they can't settle for a field goal, because a missed opportunity to score could lose you this game. So I think there's the game plan for the Buckeyes. Attack vertically. Get Jeremiah Smith, get Emeka Egbuka, get Carnell Tate, get Brandon Enos one-on-one, and go at them vertically to try to run it up fast to give them an opportunity to win. But at the same time, that's what Tennessee's going to be trying to do. With Thornton, Nico, they're going deep, man. And the Buckeyes have to bracket those deep routes, because we saw already what it looks like when a team like Oregon lines up a Tez Johnson and they just keep going vertical and keep going vertical, and they say, stop it. So that's where the game's at. I like the Buckeyes to win. I like it to be close, but I'm going to make this preference. Ryan Day, you drop this game, and I know you got a vote of confidence from the athletic director, but you're packing, bro. You're packing. You got it in a perfect scenario. Even though it's a hard opponent, it's a scarlet out. They dropped $1 million to make it look like it's an all-red place. They're wearing red-on-red uniforms. It's going to be nuts at night. You're not going to have those classic Ohio State fans. You're going to have the crazies out there. That stadium should be shaking for the whole game. So I like the Buckeyes to win 28-21. And I like Jeremiah Smith to be the player of the game with 115 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. So give me the Buckeyes to win 28-21 with a key play on Nico. Either he fumbles, he throws an interception, or something happens that swings the momentum for the Buckeyes to walk out of Columbus, Ohio with a victory and move on to play Oregon out in the Rose Bowl in round 2. Hey, y'all, we made it to an end of a show. It's been a great podcast. We've talked about a lot of things, a lot of topics. We're not going to do a sneaky game this week because we really don't have none. It's bowl season, right? But I think there's going to be some good games. So, Andy, I just want to get your final thoughts before we close out. And where can people find you across the board?
Yeah, this is going to be a great weekend. I'm really interested to see how the first round of home playoff games go. I think it's something that we need to continue to do in college football. I think it's really cool. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this looks like. And as always, you can find me on my Substack. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm online pretty much everywhere under AC Pregler, and I'll be, looking forward to writing about this weekend's games. I have no idea what's going to happen, and that makes it so much fun.
Got it. Sarah, great show. What you got going on this weekend? When will we hear from you again?
Well, I mean, I only am here right now, so only see me on those Mondays, but we never know what we might see in the future. But just can't wait for this. I'm so excited for this. This is something that I never truly ever thought was ever going to come out of college football and has made me so much more interested in it, which is why I love doing this now. So I just can't wait for these games. I can't wait to see how they end up. And these are some really, really great teams and great coaches that I just can't wait to see what they can pull off this week and going into where they, end up next week.
Absolutely. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for another opportunity to have a great show. You can check me tomorrow night over on Steelers Almighty, the big show with me and my boy Big B as we break down the Steelers' loss to the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens. We got injury information going on for the Steelers that we'll share on that podcast tomorrow night. On Wednesday night, we'll be on Pump Your Brakes with Shannon White, the Triple OG, my boy Tate Boy Fresh, breaking down the Steelers game with the Ravens as well. Friday night, the Homies and Homies Overtime podcast. We'll be talking about power rankings and how it might have just shifted in the NFL based on injuries of certain teams, Kansas City, Detroit, and we'll get into a little bit of college football talk on there. And then make sure you check out the flagship show, the Know-It-Alls podcast, on Sundays at 6. We'll be right after the playoff games have happened, so we'll have all the results as well as what's going on with the NFL playoff picture that week, because we have huge games and huge implications this week in the NFL. And then don't forget to come back on the Level Up College Football Podcast with me, Andy P, and Sarah C next Monday on Fans First Sports Network. As for myself, as for Sarah, and as for Andy P, we will holler at you guys next week. Have a great week of college football, and we'll see you.